Today's guest can help you earn more, work less, and possibly pick up a hobby that's going to boost your confidence while taking you on some absolutely amazing adventures. By the way, she's got a podcast that ranks in the top 10% too. I've got your interest now, right? Today, we're going to hear from Melissa Hussong of Her Handlebars and the Full-Time Freedom Podcast. You're going to want to stick around, so stay tuned. So, Melissa, thank you for coming on. The Full-Time Freedom Podcast. What's the genesis for that? How did this come about?
Yeah, the Full-Time Freedom Podcast is something that we've been doing for about 2.5 years. And we're really about doing what you love, living your freedom life, and doing it full-time, not just on weekends. But we started as just 3 best friends having conversations. And we were having these conversations. Back then, we were building businesses. We all had these little side hustles kind of in their infancy. And we're having conversations every week about what we were learning. And, hey, I learned how to file my LLC paperwork. This is how you do it. This is how I started learning copywriting and putting my website together. So I would share that information. And then we thought, well, heck, if we're finding a ton of value in this, why don't we just record what we are doing and put it into the ether for other people to learn from? And that is how we started. And it was very organic.
I was about to say, it seems like this very organic growth with that. And it's like, to me, it's the natural extension of your coaching business, which is Her Handlebars. I mean, I'm assuming there's the growth piece to this. It's not just the sharing. I'm assuming there's a growth piece to this also. Is that a good assumption by me, or am I way off the mark here?
No, like if I listen back to our original episode, which the day we decided to start a podcast, we got on the next night and we just recorded. We had zero idea what we were doing. And that first episode is mostly giggling because we felt like such imposters. And we, from the beginning, have taken people on that journey of what does it mean to start businesses? Does it mean to live into your potential? And there is a huge growth piece to the podcast, not just personally, but also in how far we've come since then. And then that has morphed into the coaching and the business mentorship that I do today, and how I'm just really sharing my story to help other people, but helping them understand that they have unique skills and they can step into all of that to live their freedom life as well.
So here's a question for you that I occasionally like to ask people. When is the last time you went back and listened to your first episode to say, oh, that's where we started?
It's been it's probably 6 to 9 months, if I'm honest, when I first listened to it. But it is burned into my brain, Josh. It was such a big step for us. And do you know what? It's still one of our top listened to episodes. It's still one of the episodes we get the most feedback on. And I think that's really cool and kind of funny, but people go back, and maybe you know this too. They always start from the start when they listen to your show. So I think that's kind of cool.
So when you go back, as a coach, there's intention with most things that you look at. But as a coach, sometimes it's easier to coach that than it is to do it yourself, I'm assuming, in some cases. With the podcast, the evolution of it, has that been intentional, or has that just been an organic evolution, I guess I would say?
Very organic. And Josh, I wish I could tell you this was intentional. I mean, every episode we have gotten more intentional, and every episode we're trying to get better. Every episode we put feedback into play, and we're really honing in more and more about what the audience wants. How do we serve them? How do we help them in their business? But at the start, we were just 3 friends recording our thoughts and our lessons. But now, I say, it's more intentional. we rebranded about 9 months ago, and that was super intentional because at the time, me and my co-host we just had babies kind of around the same time, and we were like, okay, this is just a new level. Our old name didn't resonate anymore. I think we had just kind of evolved past what we were 2.5 years ago, which hopefully everyone does. And then we were very intentional about the rebrand, and this is where the marketing piece comes into play, is like we tapped into our audience. We did a lot of surveys. We did a lot of like testing, like A/B testing, I guess you could say, on the cover art, the name. And we really went deep into that and got more intentional. And now we are starting to pick up a lot more. You know, we found out we're a top 10% podcast. We didn't start with that intention in mind. It just happened. But we love it. And I think it's because we love it and we continue to show up and we feel really strongly about sharing that message. And that's why we've been so consistent.
That makes sense. And I'm going to come back to that A/B testing in a second. Now, something that you mentioned before is you spent a lot of time in building the community around stuff, in terms of getting that tribe is what you actually called it. And you also alluded to the fact that you treat them like the third person in the conversation or an extra person in the conversation. What were some of the things that you did in building that community?
Yeah, just a lot of it was addressing them in the conversation and kind of pretending that they are in the room with us. So saying like, hey, if you're listening to this and this resonates, then blah, blah, blah. And really kind of bringing them on our journey. So I think how did we do that is addressing them, keeping them in the forefront of our mind, but also saying like, hey, if you have feedback, send us a DM on Instagram. Hey, if you are resonating with us, send us an email, that sort of thing, and really keeping the communication open. We also have one segment at the end of every podcast called Weekly Wins. And we just kind of go around, do like the highlight win of the week, Jessie and I, and then we'll include an audience win. And that's another way that we've really wanted to, and that has been intentional, is bringing the audience with us, including them from the start and saying, hey, like, this is your show too. Like, we're here because of you. And for that reason, we're so grateful. And we want to elevate your win on the show because you're just as much a part of this as we are.
That's awesome. That is a brilliant way to do that. I love it. You mentioned the A/B testing. Now, was that done in the community like with, hey, just vote? Do you like this logo or this logo? Or did you post both of them? Or what did that look like in a lot of cases?
Yeah, so that the testing that we did on that was the cover art, the name, and then the sort of sub heading, or like, you know, you have the name and then you have like the tagline was what we were calling it. So what we did was, it was very grassroots. We reached out directly to the people that we knew of who listened to the show, and also generally in our network, people that fitted the demographic of our ideal listener, of what the data was showing us. And, you know, Jessie and I had kind of done the work beforehand and researched and picked out, you know, three preferable names that we liked, 3 preferable taglines. And we'd say, hey, community, of these 3, can you tell us what you prefer, rank it, and then kind of tell us what your association is and why. So we understand a little bit about if we're missing anything. And we probably did that to like 100 individual people. We put it in our Facebook group. And the results from a marketing perspective, Josh, maybe you'll resonate with this, is like it came back almost 100% of the time with something that we didn't prefer. And that was such a testament to like, you need to ask your audience, because it was so humbling, because we were like, oh yes, it's this name. This name is the one with this tagline. And they're like, no, I hate it. And you're like, wow, I was so off the mark. And I think it's just like good data for me to be like, okay, trust the community, give them what they want. It's not about you.
It's hilarious you say that because I actually teach a podcasting class. And in that class, there's a lot of times where people are like, I've got a name for my podcast. And they say it out loud and everyone in the room looks at them like, really? That's the name you're going to go with. It's funny because it is that same exact reaction. And I think that's hilarious. What we think internally is very different in terms of what other people are going to see too, which is so funny.
It is.
If you're going to give someone advice that's thinking about starting their own podcast, you have a SHIFT acronym. And for those that aren't aware, there's part of how we've associated with each other is our love for motorcycles. Those are helmets behind her, those round things, especially the Dayglow one. And I love that color. But is this where you would use that SHIFT acronym for someone to start their podcast? And can you explain that then?
Yeah, absolutely. I see online so much, like the podcast scene is blowing up. There are I feel like hundreds, thousands of indie podcasts starting every day. And it really excites me, Josh, because it's more people. I get so excited when I see these people online because I'm like, yes, someone new is coming out of the woodwork to express themselves and bring their joy to the world and light up something because they're lit up and they want to share that. And I think it's so beautiful. But I do see a lot of other people like, oh, I'm so scared. Like, who am I to kind of jump in and share, or who am I to put myself out there? But I really am. It was one of the best decisions I ever made, Josh, was starting this podcast. And I'm like, I have no hesitation in saying that. And it's changed my life. And if anyone out there is thinking about starting the podcast, 1,000% talk to Josh about doing that because it will change your life. And I'm glad that I did it. And I had 2 best friends with me to help me go. But if I didn't have my friends, I don't think I would be where I am. And that's absolute truth. So my SHIFT framework really speaks to that. If I was 2.5 years ago doing this by myself, I had nothing to do. I would say you have to shift. You have to shift your mindset and really up level in a new way because it's going to take a lot of learning to kind of get into this space. So the S really is for show up for your dreams, show up for yourself and back yourself. And the H is have community. So surround yourself with positive people, maybe who are in this space or who are going to support you no matter what. And maybe that's Josh because Josh has been there before. He's a pro at this. He knows what he's doing. And then I is invite a mentor. So that's another one. Someone who has been there before, someone who can really hold your hand and say like, I can show you how to do it. And F would be focus on you. You know, so much of the world, we are looking outside of ourselves. We're looking at other people's shit. We're focusing on drama and news that really doesn't impact our life. Forget about that. Tune out the noise and focus on you. And the T is to trust yourself. Again, look internally. Like if you have this calling, if you really want to do something, just trusting that that's right for you and taking that next step. And that is going to get you really far. And it's going to help you shift your mindset and basically upshift into a new level, a new identity that's going to get you really far. And like, you know, you think about the motorcycle metaphor, it's going to help you roll the throttle on your life and on your dreams.
I love that. And the next thing we're going to dive into is the motorcycle stuff. The thing that I found too with some of the podcast stuff, when people start out, they don't have the confidence in it because they're like, no one wants to hear from me. What I find interesting is that everyone's experience is unique. And if you're able to bring that experience to the table, too many people want to talk to everyone, not realizing that there are 8 billion people on the planet. There's a group of people that would love to hear your story that may have something to associate with. So yes, I totally agree with that. Going with the upshifting, rolling on the throttle. What brakes? I don't have any brakes. Let's talk about Her Handlebars. The vision behind that as your coaching business and how it's connected to motorcycles. Give me the connection there and just the base on that.
Yeah, well, I think if you're, just kind of picture yourself for a second, like riding a motorcycle on the open road, 2 lanes unfolding in front of you, your hands, on the handlebars, wind in your face, beautiful sunset all around. Maybe you see mountains, maybe you see beautiful prairie, and you're just going, you're like rolling the throttle. The future is totally your choice. And there is a freedom there that feels so real and makes you so present in the moment. It's a feeling, right? It's beautiful. And that is what I try to bring to my business now, is like that potentiality of like, you can do whatever you want. You have the power to do whatever you want. Let's just figure out what it is that you want to achieve in your business. So the clarity and then the confidence to get you there. And then that's going to come with the cash flow eventually. But it is a motorcycle feeling. It's a motorcycle mindset that I'm bringing. And it's a big part of my branding now too.
I absolutely love that. And it's what I find interesting is before we got on here, one of the conversations that we had was about the different niches of motorcycling. And to me, it's like in business, it's very much about finding where you fit, where you're good. If you put me on a cruiser, I am probably going to drop it at every single traffic light. Put me out in the dirt and I'm a pretty happy guy. Put me on a supermoto, happy. Put me on a sport bike on a track, I'm going to be scared. My throat and large intestine are probably going to pass each other. So I see the niches there. One thing that I have to ask is motorcycling is traditionally been a male thing, just over the years, over the decades. So what are some of the common challenges that women face when it comes to motorcycle riding, and how do you address those when it comes to both like riding a motorcycle and coaching?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I learned to ride motorcycles about 5 years ago in Minnesota, and I loved it so much that 2 years later, I certified to become a MSF, Motorcycle Safety Foundation, rider coach. And I did that for a season in Minnesota. So I've seen a lot of people coming through, getting their endorsement, so many different people, right? So you'll see like the older demographic, for example, you'll see really young kids who have like just turned like 18 and they're like, cool, I'm going to go get my license. And you'll see anyone in between. And I really observed, not just with myself and my friends, but also the women coming through my courses, was that women, we just tend to have a different risk calculation. Like we're risk averse, let's put it that way, especially for something that puts you in a risky situation willingly. And that's something that, women aren't really taught to do growing up. Maybe boys are encouraged to like take a bit more risks as a child playing, but, we're sort of encouraged like play it safe, do what you know. And a lot of fear comes with that too. And riding motorcycles deals with not only overcoming the fear of the risk factor and potential danger, but it's also the risk of doing something new and maybe sucking at it at the beginning. And again, a lot of people don't like to do that. Think back, if you're listening, think back to your life, and have you ever tried to do something new and like totally bombed? And how did that feel? Probably not great. Did you continue with it? Maybe, maybe not. But it does take a little bit of tenacity and persistence and willingness to maybe look a little silly and to drop your motorcycle. But I think the important thing to remember, and this was a huge one for me because I did not grow up riding. 5 years ago, before then, I didn't know motorcycles. I didn't have friends that rode motorcycles. One day I just decided that I wanted to ride. And I was terrified of dropping my motorcycle. Like, it would almost stop me going for rides. I would shake, like physically like shake before I would leave the house because I'm like, I don't want to do it today. I don't want to drop my motorcycle at a light and be embarrassed. At some point I was like, I'm just going to walk away. If that happens, I'm just going to leave my bike and run away. Like that was how I was planning it in my head, but I was planning for failure. And what happens is like, yes, obviously I dropped my motorcycle. Yes, there were lots of people around in many situations. But what also happened was every single time I did that, multiple people ran to help me pick it up. And that was a huge lesson for me, is that like, yeah, I think everyone drops their bike, duh, but it's okay. You pick it back up. Other people are going to pick you back up, literally, and you're going to roll the throttle again. You're going to keep going. You're going to go blow through that light because there is no other option. You cannot leave your bike there. You have to keep going. And it takes a little bit to get there. Like I didn't wake up with that mindset, but once you realize that you can do something that you've never done before, I think that's where it unlocks like a new kind of door, and you're like, oh shit, what else can I do? Like I can do this now. All right, let's go.
It's so funny because the other thing is as you're describing all of this, first off, if I don't, I mean, as someone that rides like dual sport stuff, if I don't drop my bike at least once or twice, it wasn't a good ride.
Yeah, nice.
But second off, as you're talking about this, the parallels with business in being afraid to drop the bike, the parallels with business in that are uncanny. So many people won't start the business because they're afraid of dropping the bike. They're afraid of what's going to happen. And if you build a community around you, that community is going to help you pick that back up. They're going to keep you going. They're going to make sure that, okay, they'll help dust you off. Yep, it's got a small dent here. That's not great, but it's still rideable. So go out there and ride and enjoy the thing. Those parallels are just amazing to me. You've mentioned too in some of your materials the importance of self-care and balance. How do you prioritize your energy? Obviously now as a mother, as a human, as a business owner, how do you, put those priorities to make sure that you're getting everything done, yet that includes making sure that you're not going to lose your mind and put a Melissa-shaped hole in the wall?
Well, I've definitely done that before. Let's be real. Like every day is not sunshine and rainbows and like happy, positive thoughts, but I've started to plan for those days. And, I say that shift framework before, but like I still do that every day. Like it doesn't go away. There is a certain maintenance, when you have a motorcycle, you don't just buy a motorcycle and it sits in the garage forever and you're expected to ride it for eternity. Like, no, there is very serious maintenance that you need to do to that bike regularly, frequently, so that when you do get on and ride, you're like, cool, I can rip confidently. I know where I'm going. I know this machine's going to get me there. More importantly, it's going to get me home in one piece. So that shift framework helps me to maintain that. And really the biggest thing in finding that balance is the focus gets me there first. Like, yes, shit is going on in the world. Yes, there is drama in my family. Yes, there is drama in my town. There's like so much stuff that pulls us away from our lives and like what we're here for, right? But you just got to turn the focus back and say, okay, like what do I want to spend my energy on? Okay, family, then business, then health and well-being. And really narrowing in that focus, deciding what my capacity is gonna consist of, and then putting in the boundaries to be like, yeah, I'm going to work these hours. I'm going to schedule podcast calls from 8 to 11 a.m. on Thursdays, structure my week around those priorities. And then when I do that, I know that every single week I'm working towards my big goals, and that's kind of going to roll up to moving the needle forward on my business and the podcast. But when I think about balance, again, the motorcycle metaphor, like I can't get out of my head because
we're between the two of us, we're going to be stuck on that. We know this
forever. I think about motorcycles don't have an infinite load limit, right? It's a limit for a reason. Every motorcycle is built to specs. It's engineered to carry a certain amount of weight, but our life isn't. Like we have a limit on what we can do at all times, and the more things you put on a motorcycle, the more unsafe it becomes. You can't stack it infinitely high on the sissy bar because like you're probably going to fall over at some point. If you put too much weight on it, like the brakes will just give out, the suspension's going to give out, you'll probably start leaking fluid. And realizing like how much can you take realistically on your motorcycle at any given time? What's going to fit in the saddlebags? Okay, let's just be intentional about that. We need to like structure our load based on what's important to us. And that's really how I approach the idea of balance. That's how I approach the idea of burnout. And when we start to overload the saddlebags, that's when we're getting into like that dangerous territory of burnout, because that's when we're going to start seeing the wear and tear on the machine, and it's going to start to slow down and get us down a dangerous road. So you want to make sure that you're focusing on what matters, and that is reflected in your day-to-day and every week.
It's funny you say that, because I haven't always been the best at that in life. But the other day, I just went through my saddlebags to be like, what do I actually need in here? Because I've got a small trip coming up, and I'm like, what do I actually need in here? And what's just weighing me down?
Yeah.
And to do that with life is probably something that I should look at here shortly. What's the most, like, this journey? What is the most valuable lesson that you've learned in, let's say, both the podcast and business combined? Because I know they're very close.
Yeah, definitely. The first thing that comes to mind sounds cheesy, but I can't, I'll try and spin it in a way that sounds cool, is doing what you love. I mean, how many times have we seen someone go, do what you love? And you're like, yeah, but what does that mean? And what that meant for me was, and this took me years to get right. Like, I didn't get this. I was, to use your reference, Josh, I was riding a dirt bike pretending it was a Harley and trying it to make it a Harley. And what I mean by that was like, I was trying to be something in business that I wasn't. I was, the podcast, I didn't see for so long that the podcast was like getting the traction. And I think that was my dirt bike. I was living my business, my life. I was like, oh, I need to be this. I should be this. Like, this is how a business looks. This is how, how it's supposed to be. And really trying to fit a circle into a square hole, I guess. And then it wasn't until the podcast started taking off where I was like, oh shit, I'm getting traction here that I never expected. Is that because I love this thing? And it was the path of least resistance, and it spoke to my skills in a way that nothing really else did. And that was, I think, a testament is just to like, it's okay to do the things you love, because that's where you show up. That's where you have the most consistency, because you love it, right? So you're going to show up, and that's where you have the most enthusiasm. And instead of trying to focus on my email list, or instead of trying to figure out the next hashtag Instagram trend or whatever, it's like, do what you love, because that's what resonates with people, because people love to see other people lit up. It's really inspiring. And I think that is a message that I wish I learned sooner. They're like, it's okay to do the things I like because it's fun.
It's funny. I love that, because obviously both of us have a certain amount of enthusiasm. And I think some of that's natural, but a lot of that comes, I believe, from what we do. For you as the podcast host, as the coach too, no one wants a coach that doesn't want to be a coach.
Real.
It just doesn't work. No one wants to listen. I mean, you can tell on podcasts when someone is burnt out, when someone is just out of it. There's just the enthusiasm isn't there. The air is, it's like they've sucked all the air out of the room, and it's just not there.
Yeah.
I've seen it happen before, and it's one of those things where it's like, okay, let's take that reset. Let's get back to where we're supposed to be. Let's get back to where it's fun, and go from that. Speaking of which, I got 3 fun questions for you here. What's your favorite motorcycle to ride?
Oh, my favorite is probably not going to resonate with many people, but it was my second motorcycle ever. And it was a BMW K75. She was from 1992. And actually, cool story about this bike, right, was that 1992, all the internal parts had made in West Germany on it. Like even all like the little, all the parts on the inside was really cool. So she was a beautiful ride. Baja Red. I think there were only like 4 made that were shipped to the US that color. And I loved it. Like it probably wasn't the best motorcycle, in the coolest choice. But it meant so much to me. And it was, it had a great story. I bought it from the original owner. I really resonated with him. Like he cried when he sold it to me because it was just his baby, but he couldn't physically ride a motorcycle anymore. And that really broke my heart. It was a killer negotiation. Like I really loved the whole negotiation of that. And I had some good times on that. That was my ride or die in Minnesota. And I loved cruising down the Mississippi River. I loved cruising the prairies. It was a feeling. Like obviously it's a bike and it was beautiful, but it was a feeling.
So what would be your dream adventure trip on a motorcycle?
Oh, amazing. If I have infinite time, I would revisit the US national parks on a road trip. I would do that.
Makes sense.
You see so many cool places.
If you could ride back in time, of course, I've got to use a ride analogy here. If you could ride back in time and give advice to your younger self, you've got 1 sentence. What would it be?
Keep going. You're going to make it.
Love it. Absolutely love that. That to me is a great message and a great place to end. Thank you for coming on, Melissa. I really appreciate this, especially because of the time difference. You're in Australia right now. As we record this, it's 8:30 in the morning, whereas it's 6:30 p.m. here. So I really appreciate that. For all of those watching, take inspiration from this. Realize that something top 10% podcast is attainable. You can get there. You've got to put in the work, but if you do it with something passionate that you're passionate about, you can definitely get there. That all being said, do me a favor, make sure you take care of yourself. If you can, take care of someone else, and I will see you soon.